Hello YouTube, this is Samus once again, here today to bring you a little game maker tutorial of sorts on how to make a game with absolutely no objects. As you can see here, I don't have any objects made, just a room, because you have to have a room to, in order for Game Maker to allow you to run it. But we're going to be using nothing but the room's creation code, and just kind of show you how you would go about making a game. This is kind of, interesting because you have to go about making your games a little different, and it's interesting to get all your code into one location because you can just highlight it all and give it to somebody else as, one piece of text, and then they just paste it and they have the full game. It's also kind of funny when if somebody's trying to copy your game and look at your code and steal stuff from you, it's harder for them to understand what's going on when there's no objects. So let's get started with this. Alright, so first of all, our creation code is going to go right here, and I'll get back to that later. But then our step and draw event is going to be down here. This is going to be a while statement, which is a while loop, and this one just means true, so I can type in true, but one is less characters. So while true, then it's going to loop, and this loop will never end because this one's not going to change. It's always going to be a 1. So this loop will go on forever. So if this loop goes on forever, how would we end the game? How would we get out of the loop? So real quickly, we're going to do if keyboard check vk escape, and then we're going to say break. And what break does is it ends a loop or a switch statement, and a switch statement I'm not really going to get into. It's kind of like the alternative of an if statement. You can look it up if you want to. But it also ends a loop. So when it gets to this, it's going to read break. It's going to look one out, see this if, and it's not a loop, so it's going to go one further. It's going to see, okay, well, here's a loop, break out of it. And then we're going to say game end, which closes the game in Game Maker. So check the keyboard. If you're pressing escape, it's going to end this loop and end the game. But this won't quite work. The reason why this won't quite work is because Game Maker, every step, automatically updates keyboard and mouse states. But since we're using this infinite while loop, the keyboard and mouse states will never get updated, so we'll never register that the escape key was pressed. So we need to say IO handle, and this updates the keyboard and mouse states. IO stands for input output, so it handles the inputs, as in the keyboard and mouse, so that it can be registered. But there's one more thing that needs to be added to make this the keyboard and mouse really work. So down here we're going to add if keyboard check any key, vk any key, or keyboard check released vk any key, and or so check any key, check released any key, or mouse check button mb any, or mouse check button released mb any. Alright, there we go. And so if any of the keyboard buttons are pressed or released, or any of the mouse buttons are pressed and released, we're going to say IO clear after all the checks are done. So this is going to happen after all the keyboard stuff. Basically, the thing is, once IO handle gets called, so let's say you press a key, and it's going to do IO handle and say, okay, it's pressed. And then when you release it, it's still going to say it's pressed. And if you have a keyboard check release, if you release a key, it's going to say, yes, it's released. And then it's going to continue to say, yes, it's released. So all these states of whether or not a key is pressed, released, or whatnot, they stay forever unless you say IO clear, which resets it. So you want to do IO handle, check a bunch of stuff, and then say IO clear at the end. So now, if we give this a try real quick, we have this black screen. Notice it's black because the background has not gotten drawn because we're in an infinite loop. But we should be able to, if I press the escape key or press this X, which acts like the escape key, there we go, and we're back to this. So the escape key ends this infinite loop. So right here is where your keyboard / mouse stuff would go, after it's gotten handled and then before it gets cleared. And down here is where we're going to put the draw stuff. I like having it at the end, so after it processes everything, this is where it's going to go. So we're going to say draw set color C blue, set the color to blue, and then draw ellipse mouse x minus 16, mouse y minus 16, mouse x plus 16, mouse y plus 16, 0 for false, no outline. So at the mouse's x and y position, it'll draw a blue circle. However, this isn't actually going to get drawn to the screen. To do that, we need to say screen refresh. So basically, when we call these when we call all these drawing functions, they get drawn on kind of like a virtual screen, and then screen refresh draws that onto the actual screen for you to see. So if we check this out, we'll see that it's drawing a blue circle with the mouse. Notice it's not erasing the previous ones, it just keeps drawing more, and that's because we're not drawing a background to cover it up. The same thing would happen on any other GameMaker game. If you went to backgrounds and you uncheck this draw background color, and you didn't draw any backgrounds or anything, you would just see this black, and it would just draw everything on top of itself. So to get it to draw the background color, the first thing we're going to do in draw is draw clear background color. Clears the window and the background color, and then it draws everything. So with that, we have this nice circle following the mouse. Now, if you want to mimic the little button that allows you to draw the background color, you could even do if background show color, then draw the background color. So that way, draw background color is off, that's black right here, and we get this, all these circles and whatnot. And then if draw background color is on, we get the nice background. Now, a big problem with this loop is, unlike steps, which you can have a certain amount of steps per second, this one, it goes as fast as your computer can read it. This loop, it's happening very fast. So if you have a character walking across the screen at a speed of 5, he's just going to zoom right by. So the way to solve that is to say sleep, which basically freezes the game for a certain amount of milliseconds. So I'm going to say 1,000, and that is 1 second. Then divide that 1,000 by room speed, and that's the number of steps per second. So that's why we need this in seconds. So that's why I have 1,000. So basically, the higher the room speed, the faster your game's going to run. The lower the room speed, the longer this sleeps. So the slower it gets refreshed. So basically, right now we have a speed of 30. I'm going to change that to 5. We're going to play that, and notice how laggy this thing is. But if we have a speed of 60, it's all nice and smooth. So that's how you take in the room speed into effect. So that's really the gist of it. I mean, you can try to mimic as much stuff as you want. Like, instead of just this if background show color, you could check all the backgrounds, and if drawing a background picture is enabled, to draw it, and yada yada. But so now I'm going to make a really quick, simple game. First of all, up in the creation, we're going to create some variables. We're going to say xx equals random room width, yy equals random room height, direction equals random 360, speed equals 1, and score equals 0. So that's going to be all our variables at the start. Then right here we're going to say xx plus equals cosine dir times speed yy minus equals sine dir times speed. So this is going to make it move in the direction at that speed. And it's going to be our ellipse. So we're going to say xx minus 16, yy minus 16, xx, yy. So instead of drawing a circle at our mouse, it's going to use this xy coordinate. And then draw it. If xx is greater than width, else if xx is less than 0, if yy is greater than room height, else if y is less than 0. This freaking camera thing is driving me crazy. So basically I added xx minus equals room width, xx plus equals room width, y minus equals room height, y plus equals room height. So if xx is past the room width location, it'll get teleported back to the top. So it kind of wraps the screen around. So if we check that out real quick, it's moving really slow because I set the speed to 1, and you can see it's wrapping around the screen. Then I added this bit right here, which is if mouse check button pressed, MB left, so if I press the left button on the mouse, and the distance, point distance, the distance between mouse X, mouse Y, so the mouse location, and XXYY, which is where the circle is getting drawn, is less than or equal to 16, which is the radius of the circle. So if I'm pressing the left button on the mouse, and the mouse is within the circle, then increment the score by 1. Along with incrementing a score, we're going to repeat basically everything up here. So I'm just going to be lazy and copy it. So X is in a new random location, Y is in a new random location, direction is random again, and then speed plus equals 1 to increment the speed. So it goes faster, thus making it harder. So we check this out. Got the ball going pretty slow. We click it, it's in a new location. Click it again, click it, and notice that the mouse works correctly. I'm currently pressing it, it's not doing anything. I'm not pressing it, it's only if I press while my mouse is over. So now we're going to actually draw the score. So down here we can say draw text. We're going to make it at location 5, 5. The string is going to be string score. So now score is 0. Click it, score is 1. Click it, score is 2. One thing I forgot to do is draw set color C black. That way it draws the text black, because before it was drawing it blue due to this setting the color to blue for the ellipse. So there we go. It's a very crappy game, but it uses absolutely no objects and no sprites. But if you wanted to, you could use this, you can still use sprites and use drawing functions for sprites in here. But yeah, now an easier way you could go about doing this is you go to the Game Maker manual, which is a great resource, by the way. I don't think enough people use it. Don't think enough people realize it even exists. Basically, we got this section called Resources, and it's how you handle your resources, which is your sprites, sounds, backgrounds, yada yada. And then there's Changing Resources, which is basically how to change aspects about the resources during gameplay. So if we go to Objects, there's a bunch of interesting stuff about objects in here. So while you can change stuff like set what the parent is of an object, set the depth of an object, you can also, right here, object add adds a new object to the game, and it returns the index. So you could say something like object ball equals object add. And so you've added a new object and you call it object ball. And then you can do object event add. This first variable is index, and so you would put in the name of your object that you just made. Event type, which would be like draw, keyboard, step, and then event number is kind of like a more specific. So for instance, if your event type is alarm, then your event number would be 1. If your event type is step, your event would be end, so it'd be the end step event. And then code string, which means you put your code in here, and it has to be within quotes because it's a string. Note that it has to be code, it can't be drag and drop. I mean, you're doing this in code anyway, so why would you do drag and drop? So if you want to know what the event type and event number, what you would put in there, there's a part under gameplay, generating events. And here's the variables for the event names: event create, destroy, step, alarm. And then here is the sub event names. So this would be for type, and then this would be for the event number, if there is one. So that's how you can create events. And you can create objects from scratch, so you can essentially make a normal Game Maker game by, in the room creation code, making objects and whatnot, and then running it like a normal Game Maker game after that. So that's another way you can go about it, but I like to do it with legitimately no objects whatsoever, because technically you're making objects when you do that. So, but anyway, so that's how you can make a game in Game Maker with no objects whatsoever. And I hope you guys enjoyed that. This is Sam's Release signing off.